Hey guys, Mr. Kruger. I'm here to talk to you today about China. All right, modern China. We're going to go from the 1920s all the way up until today. I want to make sure that we cover all this because you never know what's going to hit you on the readings exam. So let's get started here. All right. Before we get to the notes, just a little background on what was happening in China in the early 20th century. A lot of chaos and turmoil going on there. All right. You have the Qing dynasty collapsing in the early 1910s. 1911 is the year. You have local warlords taking some political control in China. You have foreigners trying to expand their influence over the Chinese, and this is all going to cause some political turmoil that's going on in China during the First World War and at the beginning of the 20th century. Let's talk about the 1920s. In the 1920s, you have two main political parties in China. You have the Nationalist or Kuomintang Party and the Communist Party. The Nationalists are going to be led by a man named Sun Yat-sen. He will be the official president of China, okay? However, he is dealing with this warlord issue. Local warlords taking control over certain areas, foreign invaders taking control over other areas, all right? So a lot of this political turmoil is getting people in the Chinese countryside to turn to the revolutionary ideas of Marx and Lenin, and of course these people will be supported by the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union sees an opportunity here, and they're more than willing to train Chinese students and military officers to lead a communist revolution. And by the 1920s, a small group of Chinese communists had formed their own political party. So you have real division in China during the 1920s. These two groups are forced to come together at this point, however, because of the foreign influence and warlord issues. These two groups joined together in order to get rid of these problems. All right. Basically, they had asked Western democracies to help them with the foreign influence and the warlord problem, but Western democracies refused to help. So the only country that would help Sun Yat-sen was the Soviet Union. So he joins forces with the communists and gets some aid from the Soviet Union. But despite all this, he still believes in democracy, nationalism, and economic opportunity, his three principles of the people. All right. Some problems will arise when in 1925 Sun Yat-sen passes away and his successor is a man named Chiang Kai-shek. All right, he'll take over the leadership of the Nationalist Party, and his ideas are much different than Sun Yat-sen. He comes to power as an energetic young army officer. He is determined to smash the power of the warlords and reunite China, but he has really little interest in democracy or communism for that matter. So his rule is going to be characterized by a few different things. First of all, political dictatorship. He is going to take a lot of control over the country and rule with an iron fist a little bit, okay? He's going to be known for corruption within his government and also for oppressing and really treating the peasants and workers of China not very well. Obviously, this is going to feed into the communist feelings that a lot of people are feeling during this time. So this will cause him issues with the Communist Party, okay? In 1927, Chiang Kai-shek is leading what they call the Northern Expedition with the communists to try and crush the local warlords. And they're having some success. He's able to capture Beijing. He's going to go on to take control of a new government led by the Kuomintang, the Nationalist Party. But he doesn't plan on including the communists in this government. So in 1927, he orders the killings of thousands of Chinese communists. All right, he orders troops to slaughter the Communist Party members and the workers who support them. Thousands of people are killed, and this is going to mark the beginning of what's going to be a 22-year-long civil war. All right, so let's talk about that war. The two sides of the civil war are the nationalists versus the communists. Chiang Kai-shek will lead the nationalists. You might also see his name as Jiang Zheshu, all right, as it's depicted here. And then the communist side will be led eventually by a man named Mao Zedong, okay? You might see it spelled in a couple different ways, so I put those both on the slide for you. Make sure that you realize these are the same people. Jiang Zheshu and Chiang Kai-shek are the same person, and Mao Zedong and Mao Zedong are the same person, okay? Don't get confused. All right, so Mao and the communists promised to support the peasants and the workers, and unlike what we saw in Russia during the Communist Revolution, Mao is not trying to get industrial workers to start the revolution, but rather peasants, okay? Rural agrarian peasants, he believes, can be the ones to lead this revolution and be the difference in making his Communist Party successful. So after the Shanghai Massacre, the communists are forced to basically run away and retreat in order to survive. Okay, Jiang Jieshi, or Chiang Kai-shek, was determined to destroy what he called the Red Bandits, the communists. All right, he had led several extermination campaigns against them, trying to get rid of them, and they harassed their retreating army throughout the mid-1930s, and they're going to retreat over 6,000 miles to safety. All right. During the march, however, 6,000-mile-long march. All right. You can see the map here. This is a pretty long march. Mao makes sure that the communists are very disciplined. He tells them to treat peasants politely, pay for goods they want, avoid damaging crops, and this all makes Mao's forces welcome among the peasants that live here in the countryside, and it's going to set him up for the revolution once the Civil War really gets going. Okay. In 1937, Japan invades southern China. They had invaded previously in 1931 in Manchuria and northeastern China, but in 1937 the Japanese struck again, starting what becomes known as the Second Sino-Japanese War. Okay, they're bombing Chinese cities. They are, doing all kinds of military sieges on China. We mentioned the rape of Nanking during the World War II unit, all right? And the United Chinese Front, the nationalists and the communists united, are going to be able to fight back against the Japanese. They're going to get the support of the Soviet Union, Britain, France, the United States, all going to band together to help fight against the Chinese, okay? By the end of World War II, Chiang Kai-shek and the Kuomintang are going to control China's central government, but Mao's Communist Party controlled much of northern and central China, okay? They had organized hundreds of thousands of peasants at the village level, spreading their political ideas, and as we said, Chiang Kai-shek's government was a corrupt government, so soon the communists would triumph, and Mao would basically see his dream come to fruition as the communists are going to win the war with the support of the peasants and workers within China. Now, let's just sum this up. So this Chinese Civil War lasted from 1926 to 1949 with a brief break in the middle for World War II, okay? You have the nationalists versus the communists. Chiang Kai-shek is the leader of the nationalists, Mao Zedong the leader of the communists, and the communists will come out victorious. Now let's talk about China after World War II. Under Mao Zedong, the Chinese government will become communist, and women will be given more rights. However, for the most part, people will be denied their rights, basic rights and freedoms, as we see in the Soviet Union. All right, it's going to be a big issue throughout the entire rule of Mao Zedong and also his successor Deng Xiaoping, who we will talk about in a little while. So Mao Zedong is going to build a communist one-party totalitarian state in the People's Republic of China. All right, the communist ideology will guide the government's efforts to reshape the economy and society that China had inherited from their dynastic period. The communist government will discourage any sort of religion or traditional Chinese belief, and they will seize the property of rural landlords. Opponents of the communists were put down as counter-revolutionaries. It's a very oppressive government. In 1958, Mao will launch something called the Great Leap Forward. All right, he urged people to make a superhuman effort to increase farm and industrial output. In an attempt to improve Chinese agriculture, he's going to create communes. All right, this will bring together several villages and thousands of acres of land. Rural communes are set up to produce steel and other products. However, this proves to be a dismal failure. All right. And what's going to happen is the commune system will cut food output, partly by removing that incentive for individual farmers. All right, and between 1959 and 1961, as many as 55 million Chinese people are thought to have starved to death as a result of the Great Leap Forward. You also have something called the Cultural Revolution under Mao. China was slowly recovering from the Great Leap Forward by reducing the size of communes and taking a more practical approach to the economy. However, in 1966, Mao launches the Cultural Revolution with the goal of purging China of bourgeoisie tendencies. Okay, he urges young Chinese people to experience revolution firsthand, as his generation had done earlier in the century. and he really wants to renew the loyalty to communism. And one of the way he does this is by forming a group called the Red Guard. All right, and the Red Guard will be a bunch of teenagers that are reading this little red book of communist slogans, quotations from Chairman Mao, and they're going to attack those they consider to be bourgeois or middle class. All right, they're going to accuse these people of being harmful to China, and they're going to take these bourgeois people and humiliate them publicly, beat them, sometimes even kill them. All right, skilled workers and managers are going to be forced to leave their jobs to do manual labor. Schools and factories will be closed. The economy is going to slow down. All right, and finally, things are going to get so chaotic that Mao's going to have to bring in the army to restore order. All right. Again, the Red Guards were a group of student fighters. They enforced the Cultural Revolution. All right. There's lots of fear as a result of their tactics, and as I said, it causes so much chaos that China is going to have to be, basically almost put under martial law. The army will have to come in to restore order. In 1976, Mao Zedong dies. He's replaced by a more moderate leader named Deng Xiaoping. All right. Deng Xiaoping is going to be more of a reformer, interested in improving the economic output more than in maintaining that pure political communist philosophy. All right, he's not going to really change much politically. He's going to keep that tight control that Mao had, but he will modernize the economy with something he's going to call the four modernizations. He emphasizes agriculture, industry, science, and technology, and also defense. And what the idea here is that he's going to allow some features of a free market, such as private ownership of property. All right, he's going to dismantle the communes. Peasant families are going to be given some plots of farmland under what he calls the responsibility system. They still didn't own the land, and the government took a share of their crops. However, they could sell surplus produce, just like we kind of saw under Lenin with the NEP. Okay, Chinese entrepreneurs are also going to be allowed to set up new businesses. And Deng's going to welcome foreign investors in technology as well, okay? You're going to get investors from all over the region. Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, even the West will invest heavily in China at this time. And this is going to be a really big thing for China because it will actually help improve the economy in a number of ways, okay? You're also going to see him adapt a one-child policy in the 1980s to control the population, all right? China's population was 1.3 billion, which was the largest in the world, and in the 1980s, the government will impose the one-child policy, which limited urban families to a single child and rural families to 2 children in order to keep population growth from hurting economic development. The government will enforce this policy with fines and other penalties, and although it was harshly condemned, it did do what it was intended to do, which was control the population growth. Another key event that happened under Deng Xiaoping, besides the four modernizations, was the Tiananmen Square massacre. All right, in 1989, you're going to see a lot of economic reforms and increased contact with the West lead some Chinese to demand greater political freedom as well. So in the late 1980s, students, workers, and other people are creating a democracy movement similar to those that we're going to see in Europe at the end of the Cold War. Remember, 1989 is when the Berlin Wall falls. It's the end of the Cold War, just about. All right, it's really not till 1991, but you can see this is the same period we're talking about here. All right. However, Deng and other Chinese leaders are going to refuse to allow democratic reforms, and in 1989, thousands of student protesters in Beijing are going to be demanding more liberty, all right, and they're going to occupy a place called Tiananmen Square, which is a huge public plaza in Beijing. Deng will order the military to go in there and try to disperse the crowd. When they refuse to disperse, the government will send in troops and tanks to crush the demonstration. Thousands of demonstrators are killed or wounded in the Tiananmen Square massacre. Many others are imprisoned. You're going to see some of them even be tortured. And it showed that Deng Xiaoping, while he was good with allowing some economic reforms, was not going to allow the political reforms that a lot of these younger people were demanding. All right, so here you see a political cartoon expressing how Chinese people are oppressed. Okay, they're asking for the ideas of Locke and Jefferson. You got Mao, Marx, and Deng in the pot, but they're not going to get that from the Chinese government. All right. So since 1990, some issues that have faced China. All right. One of the big issues in China is the overpopulation and the crowded cities. All right. Um, China has been a huge force in world politics in the last 25 years, and overpopulation has been one of the big issues that they've had to deal with. Water and electricity shortage. A lot of the population is getting older and does not have a support system because of the one-child policy. All right. You're also going to see expanding global trade and economic issues. All right, the global economic recession that began in 2008 took its toll on China. Lots of Chinese factories closed as overseas orders fell. And to prevent social unrest, the government's would announce an economic stimulus package. So they're having lots of economic issues. You also see human rights violations being accused, China being accused of that. You also see China being accused of human rights violations. All right. After the Tiananmen Square massacre, China continued to jail critics and limit freedom. Human rights activists inside and outside of China have protested abuses such as the use of prison labor to produce cheap goods for export, the suppression of Tibetan culture, a big issue with Tibet in China. China's trading partners are going to call for an end to human rights abuses, but we're not going to see all this happen overnight. Okay. China will issue its first human rights action plan in 2009, but it includes the right to question government policies, but there's still some issues that people are concerned about today. And also, as China has industrialized rapidly, they've had to deal with extreme pollution in the cities as they have used a lot of coal-burning plants to get their electricity, which has caused heavy pollution in China. And they are now trying to transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Okay, so that was a real brief look at Chinese history over the past 100 years. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know.